In today's video, we're back with some more updated NHL trade rumors. We have a lot to discuss, including updates on teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the Vancouver Canucks, the Ottawa Senators, the Detroit Red Wings, and a whole lot more. We'll get into all the latest rumors coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. We're at that time of season now where the rumors are really rampant on a variety of teams. A lot of teams looking to make moves. We've seen a lot of moves already, and there's plenty more that could happen between now and Monday's deadline coming up on February the 24th. So let's kick things off with the Florida Panthers. Now, there's been some increased talk about the possibility of them moving number 2 center Vincent Trocheck. In the latest article for The Athletic, Pierre LeBrun again discusses the possibility that the Panthers pull the trigger on a potential swap here, trying to upgrade their blue line, ideally for a top pair defenseman, somebody who can play with Aaron Ekblad. Now, of course, he goes on to mention that the Panthers are not actively shopping Trocheck, but they've had some calls with teams who have blue liners that they're looking to move, and that very well could prove to be a very interesting trade match that they might have to pull the trigger on and might have to explore a little bit further. Now, prior to the Trocheck name coming into the rumor mill, there were talks about the Panthers unloading some salary, but it seemed to be more focused on a guy like Mike Hoffman. But clearly, if they move a guy like Trocheck, that'll give them more flexibility to keep some pending UFAs like Hoffman and Dodonov as well. So now one team that's been mentioned as a possible suitor for Trocheck's services would be the Minnesota Wild. Now, we've heard multiple reports that GM Bill Guerin is looking for top 2 center icemen, ideally a 1 or a 2 center, and he might be willing to part with some of his blue liners, or at least one of them, which could include either Matt Dumba or Jonas Brodin. And I think there's possible that either of those defensemen could be attractive to the Florida Panthers. Of course, based on salary cap numbers, that probably could make them work. Brodin would probably be the more ideal player that would fit well with what they're looking for, at least in my opinion. But I guess we'll see. There's certainly lots of other teams I think would be interested in Trocheck's services. His numbers have declined in the past couple of years, but at the same time, he also did endure a pretty significant, very serious injury around that time as well that we've seen the decline. Hasn't quite been the same, dominant player that he used to be, putting up some bigger numbers prior to the injury. So I guess we'll see what happens. There's no guarantee that Trocheck moves, but teams are calling the Panthers. They're aware that the Panthers very well might have to sell off some assets or to cut some salary, and that he's a very interesting player that many teams would be interested in. And if the Panthers can find that top defenseman, they very well might pull the trigger. Now, another name out there that's very, very interesting that Pierre LeBrun and others have mentioned as well, including Elliot Friedman, is Robin Lehner, goaltender of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, as we know, the Hawks have 2 pending UFA goalies in Corey Crawford and Robin Lehner, and I do think there's a really good possibility that one of them at least will not be back with the Hawks next season. Now, if I were Stan Bowman, my preference would be to keep Robin Lehner, because I think he's been a better goalie. He's younger. He's had some back-to-back excellent seasons now, so wasn't a candidate last year. I would try to invest in keeping him around longer term if I were the GM. But at the same time, Corey Crawford has been with the organization a long time. Has some Stanley Cup rings, and it's hard to part with some of those players who you've had so much success with in the past. But Crawford's made it clear as well that he doesn't intend to want to retire. Sounds like he wants to keep playing, and he wants to be a starter because he feels he can still handle that role as well. So Bowman's got some tough decisions to make, but one team that apparently is very interested in Leonard and has been since the offseason would be the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the Hurricanes were trying to sign Leonard before the Hawks did, and of course, they're looking to make an upgrade. Of course, they have Mrazek and Reimer as their tandem right now, but they would likely want to obtain Leonard and extend him if that were possible. They have that extra first-round pick that they acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Patrick Marleau contract that they took on. So they do have a pick to burn. It's been rumored for some time they'd be willing to part with that, and they very well could find that intriguing to the Hawks. Of course, they have other assets. They could include another piece as well. They have lots of prospects in the system that would be intriguing to Chicago, who certainly continue to find younger players to fit in their system. So I do think it's a possibility that Carolina could tempt Chicago to move Leonard. I'm not sure that it's a real strong possibility we see it happen, but if they come calling and offer up a significant package, Stan Bowman's going to have no choice but to listen. But in my opinion, I would sign Leonard longer term and try to get a deal done to keep him in the fold. He's proven to be one of the best goalies in the NHL since he's gotten his life together and gotten himself clean and sober and been able to to beat his addiction that he had in the past. He's been an absolutely awesome goalie the last couple of years and deserves a long-term deal. But as he mentioned, he's not taking any discounts anymore. He's done enough in the past, feels he's earned a longer-term commitment from a team with more money, and he's going to get that this summer, whether it be Carolina, Chicago, or anybody else, wherever he ends up. We've had reports from multiple NHL insiders indicating a deal to send LA Kings defenseman Alec Martinez to the Vegas Golden Knights is pretty much done. It's not official as of yet, and until it's official, you can never say never, as Bob McKenzie likes to say. Until it's done, it's not done, is what he likes to say as well. The rumored return is 2 second-round picks right now going to the Kings. I believe one might have a condition on it, but of course, like I said, that's not finalized, but that's the rumored deal as of right now. By the time this video is actually posted, that deal very well might become official. It's hard to say. If not, I'll be doing another video on it regardless to update everybody once everything does become finalized, if indeed it does take place. But clearly, Martinez would be a good fit with Vegas. They're one of the many teams looking for help on the blue line. We've seen many other blue liners already move, and there's a plethora of other D-men who could still be moved. There's still quite a few left, but the prices are going to continue to get more interesting as there's a variety of pending UFAs as well as some guys with term that are on the market here. So I guess we'll see if this Martinez to Vegas deal actually ends up getting finalized. I think it would be a good fit. Makes a lot of sense for Vegas, and a couple second-round picks to LA would be pretty awesome to a Kings prospect pool who's already pretty deep, and a nice deep draft here in 2020 to add a few more picks. Certainly not a bad haul for them at all. Taking a look at some of the other defensemen that are in play here that are generating a fair bit of interest. You've got Erik Gustafsson with the Chicago Blackhawks. You got Sammy Vatanen with the New Jersey Devils. You got Ron Hainsey with the Ottawa Senators. Those guys are all quite strong possibilities here to move before the deadline on Monday. They're all pending unrestricted free agents. All have a different level of experience. I mean, Vatanen, for example, had a lot of deep playoff runs with the Ducks. Ron Hainsey's gone into the deep playoffs with the Penguins in the past. So clearly they've got some good experience here that could be on the move, and I do expect them to likely be traded before the deadline. And apparently, according to insiders, there's all kinds of teams that are having conversations at least on potentially acquiring their services. Now, like I said, there's some other D-men with term that are also heavily rumored to possibly move, including the ones we already talked about with the Wild, which would be Matt Dumba and Jonas Brodin. I don't think both of them move, but I do think there's a strong possibility one of them could move for sure. If the right deal is offered to Bill Guerin, like I said, a top 2 center iceman along with maybe a second piece, if necessary, a pick or a prospect or something else, very well might be too much for Guerin to say no to. Now, another D-man that could likely be included in that would be Montreal Canadiens blue liner Jeff Petrie. Now, I know we've heard lots of reports, and some of these have mixed reports indicating that the Habs are not wanting to trade Petrie. I've seen reports saying that they have already decided that Petrie and Tatar, even though they have a year left on their deals, will not be traded. And we've seen other reports that the other teams are inquiring and that they might have to consider making a serious trade here. The Habs are pretty well out of contention at this point. I mean, there is still a small glimmer of hope they can get in the playoffs, but it's faded pretty far down. In my opinion, I think they're too far behind to get caught up. And apparently, we've seen reports that the Colorado Avalanche have been being scouted heavily by the Montreal Canadiens. And of course, as we talked about even yesterday and a few times in the past, those two teams have been linked for so long. There's been a lot of talks that maybe Petrie could be a player that the Avs are looking at, would want to inquire on. They could certainly add some more experience on their blue line ahead of the deadline. But the other big name in Montreal that's been rumored that the Avalanche are looking at is forward Ilya Kovalchuk. Now, there's reports that Marc Bergevin and Kovalchuk's agent, JP Barry, have apparently had some minor dialogue and will continue to do so about a potential extension. And Kovalchuk very well could end up staying in Montreal, but based on the returns that we're seeing on other players, Bergevin might be able to get more than a second-round pick that was originally the rumored asking price before. He could get a second-round pick and an extra piece, and that might be too much for him to pass up. And it doesn't mean that Kovalchuk and the Habs couldn't reconnect possibly in the summertime on a potential new deal, but Kovalchuk's really interested and wants to chase the Stanley Cup. That's one of the big things he has yet to accomplish in his career. I think it's really rumored here, according to LeBrun, he feels that he really wanted to go to the Bruins when he became a free agent earlier, but wasn't able to get a contract with them, so he went to Montreal. Clearly things have worked out well for him there, but the Bruins might be a potential target for him. And there's even been some talk, somebody suggested online, potential connection with the Washington Capitals, and I wouldn't rule that out either. Obviously, Ovechkin's there, who he's friends with, and they're a really strong team. He's got a cheap contract, wouldn't take a lot to squeeze it in. I wouldn't rule out that possibility as well. Now, there's a lot of talk as well. The Vancouver Canucks are not finished. We saw them making a big acquisition, acquiring forward Tyler Toffoli from the Los Angeles Kings. But a lot of information about other Canuck players came out after the trade, including the fact that guys like Josh Levro and Brock Besser are very well likely done for at least the regular season, and Michael Furlan will be shut down for the remainder of the year, likely the playoffs, as well as he battles concussion issues. So that's going to give them a little bit more flexibility salary cap-wise with long-term injury relief than we may have originally thought. And there's still many out there who think that the interest in Wayne Simmonds is still quite high. It's something that they might still be exploring. If they're talking to New Jersey about bringing that type of player who can kind of replace what Furlan would normally bring, Simmonds isn't the only player I think on that roster to keep an eye on. Wouldn't be shocking to possibly see them consider going after Miles Wood as well, who can also play that same similar type of role, but with a lot more speed. Wood is certainly an incredible skater and can play an agitating type of role, add a little bit of offense, and could very well bring a similar style that Furlan does. I think he could anyway. So we'll see what happens, and it could be a better price tag than Wayne Simmonds too. Those two teams apparently have continued to have conversations, and the Canucks are still considering adding an additional piece up front here for the playoffs. There's still a lot of talk as well that perhaps the Red Wings may end up moving Andreas Athanasiou as well. His stock has risen a bit lately with some improved play, and that's generating more interest in the teams that apparently are showing interest. Top of the list would be his former GM Ken Holland in Edmonton, and of course other teams even like Winnipeg as well are interested. Of course the Jets got the news that Brian Little would be out for the remainder of the year, so that's going to be a big blow to them. They were hoping to get him back. But that's certainly another hole, along with the Dustin Byfuglien situation, that the Jets are trying to address. Of course, they did acquire Dylan DeMello from Ottawa yesterday, but they're certainly not done in making acquisitions. I expect the Jets to be a little bit more busy. It makes sense that he would be a player that they would consider looking at here. Of course, he brings a lot of speed. He's a former 30-goal guy. He's a pending restricted free agent as well. So I'm not sure exactly what the asking price would be, but his stock has gone up lately, and teams are inquiring on a potential move. And you can say the same thing about Ottawa Senators forward Vladislav Nemestikov, who they picked up from the Rangers for a 4th-round pick earlier this year. He got off to a great start offensively with the Sens, and has since cooled down, but he's been great as a PK player. Scored a lot of shorthanded goals. Has been strong that way. Certainly a pretty solid two-way forward, and is the type of player that will likely generate a lot of interest ahead of the deadline. Teams looking for help, who can play in that bottom six role, kill some penalties, generate some speed as well, and that's certainly something he can bring. It's certainly been a nice addition to Ottawa in that regard, and I'm not really sure that the Ottawa Senators have a lot of interest in retaining him on a longer term extension. So I guess we will see. So lots of interest in Pageau as well, and many are still saying 50-50 chance that he either gets moved or signed. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned on that. But Nemestikov is the next Senator who's likely to be traded out the door. We also learned as well that Toronto Maple Leafs forward Andreas Johnsson is going to be out for 6 months. I mean, obviously we knew he was likely done for the remainder of the regular season, but after having knee surgery, that is now the estimated recovery time, which pretty well puts him right before training camp gets underway next year, puts us likely down into like August or September, depending on exactly how everything goes with his recovery. But Johnsson is definitely done for the regular season and for the playoffs 100%, but should hopefully be good to go for next season. So I guess we'll see how that impacts the Leafs' moves. Clearly they have a lot of injuries they're battling right now, and Kyle Dubas has to decide what moves he wants to make ahead of the deadline. They have been inconsistent as of late, need to get their act together before they end up missing out here on the playoffs and before they miss out on some potential other moves. So that is all your latest news updates for today. So of course, as always, let me know your thoughts and opinions on what you think we're going to see before NHL Trade Deadline 2020 on February 24th. Give me your mock trades down in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.